Alrighty, so you're ready to start using watercolor pencils, huh? Well, before we get into it, there's a few goals I want you to consider now and while you work. The first goal with this project is simply to understand and demonstrate the correct arrangement of colors on the color wheel. So let's make sure that your artwork shows the colors in their appropriate, correct order. Next, as with any art project, we are exploring certain creative choices. There's many choices you can make, but here's a few of them that I can think of. One, you're redesigning the color wheel. Two, you're choosing what subject matter you're going to incorporate into that new color wheel design. And you have to creatively figure out how you're going to incorporate that new image into the color. Okay, so those were the first two goals. Here's the third goal. The third goal is being able to understand and use different shades and tints of each of the colors in the color wheel. This just means being able to use different values, darks and lights of the color wheel. Shades of a color are darker versions of that color, and tints of a color are lighter versions of that color. So pink is a tint of red. And you're going to be using these different values of each of the colors in the color wheel to define the shapes and details of your subject that you're incorporating. The last goal that I'm going to mention is about improving your careful control of your coloring with the pencil and handling the brush and water. So really trying to control where the color goes, where the water goes, how you're moving around that color so that you are, painting and coloring neatly inside of the shapes of your subject. While I do expect you to understand all of these concepts and goals, I don't actually expect you to be perfect in demonstrating all of them. But effort goes a long ways. Okay, so I'm starting this demonstration, and I'm starting by erasing all of the lines in the blue section. I wanted to get rid of those lines. I can still see them just barely, so I know where I want to put my color, but I didn't want those pencil lines to mix with my colored pencil. I wanted to be showing only the colored pencil when we're all said and done. The way I'm starting to use these colored pencils, these watercolor pencils, is just like I use normal colored pencils. That's how we started off. We're just coloring, just like normal. I'm not pressing very hard at all. I don't think I'm pressing at all. The watercolor paper is so textured, it grabs hold of the color really easily. I'm not going to color as dark as I want to color eventually. It's kind of a light layer. What I want to realize is that when I add color, it's going to change the appearance of these colors quite a bit. So you don't want to overdo the coloring. I'm searching out areas that have darker colors, darker values in my subject, and I'm drawing those. But I'm not drawing them or coloring them as dark as I will eventually. I'm just getting a first initial layer down. And I'm making sure to block out all of the details and all of the shapes so that I can see all of those things. I have my reference picture handy so that I can compare what I'm doing with what is actually in the photograph. I'm not always going to follow what's in the photograph 100% completely. I'm going to change things and I'm just going to kind of go with the flow, but I use the photograph so that I can be more creative and I can have my drawing be closer to real life, even if it's not exactly the same in every detail. This first step of the artwork is a lot like how you guys did the last project where you were shading pyramid forms, shading dark to light. We're basically doing the same thing, but with color now. I almost forgot to erase that letter B. You're going to want to make sure that you erase all of the pencil lines before you add color. That'll be better. You don't want to really see the pencil lines when you're all done. But if you don't erase them, they definitely will be visible. I'm leaving some areas white because I know that when I add water, it's going to spread that color around. And some areas need to stay a lot lighter than other areas in my artwork. Okay, so now I'm starting on the water part of the watercolor painting. And so now it's more like painting. In these large shapes where I want it to look consistent for the most part, I need to use enough water to be able to spread the color around, but not too much water where it's dripping all over the place. But the brush definitely needs to be wet enough. What you can also see me doing is I'm trying to repair some mistakes. I clean off my brush occasionally and get all the color out of it, and then I will scrub an area with my clean, wet brush. And I'll kind of scrub that color up. And then I'll dry my brush really quick. And then I'll use my brush as a sponge. And I'll sponge up all of that excess color and water. I do that repeatedly throughout this process. You can see that I just had that color bleed into the background. And then I wiped it up by using the brush as a sponge. Some areas I leave white. I skipped across the branch shape so that I could have that texture available. Some areas I want to leave white. I want there to be white left over in this artwork. That's going to be your lightest value that you have. And you want to have some really light values. You want to have some really dark values, and you want to have some really light values. So it's kind of important to not paint or color every single bit. You want to have white left over. When I'm doing this step, and I'm using the color, I'm also realizing that this is not the end. This is just the first layer, the first go around. After I'm done with this, I'm going to let it dry completely. And I can go and work in the other sections of the color wheel using the same process where I use the color that is appropriate for that section of the color wheel and use different values of it to define the parts of my subject. Meanwhile, this shape is going to dry, and it's going to dry completely. And then what I can do is I can go back over it and color again. I can use my colored pencil and I can create further details. I can build darker values. I can show differences more clearly. And I can go through the process all over again.